All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking Dr. Robert A. Peterson's deeply fascinating theological framework on Christ's saving work. Now, usually when people talk about this topic, they jump straight to the major, well-known events, right? The cross and the empty tomb. But Dr. Peterson asks this really profound question that kind of completely shifts our perspective. He asks what absolutely had to happen before those famous events could actually work. Like, what is the necessary architecture, the literal underlying foundation of salvation?
To thoroughly grasp this incredibly dense theology, we're going to map out the structure of Dr. Peterson's framework step by step. So here's our agenda for today. We'll start with the 9 saving events, look at Prerequisite 1, which is the Incarnation, explore 3 pictures of salvation, move to Prerequisite 2, the sinless life, understand why perfect obedience matters, and wrap up with the foundation for the cross.
So starting off with Section 1, the 9 saving events. Let's look at the sheer scope of salvation.
Dr. Peterson expands our view significantly here. He outlines 9 distinct saving events, categorized into 3 specific phases. You've got the core events right there in the middle, the death and the resurrection. We all know those. But look at how they're flanked. Before them, we have the preconditions, the incarnation and the sinless life. And after them, flowing right out of those core events, are 5 results: the ascension, the session at God's right hand, Pentecost, intercession, and the second coming. It's really one continuous, connected timeline.
What's super interesting here is the strict architectural relationship established between these categories. Think of it kind of like taking high school math. You absolutely cannot pass calculus without first passing algebra, right? Well, the preconditions, the incarnation and the sinless life, are that required foundational setup. The core events, the death and resurrection, are the heart and soul of the saving work. But without that foundational setup, the core events are logically and theologically impossible.
Which perfectly tees up our next step, Section 2. Prerequisite 1, the Incarnation.
The definition here is incredibly strict. The Incarnation is the Son of God becoming a human being by a supernatural conception in Mary's womb. We are not talking about God just putting on a human disguise or merely appearing as a human for a little while. No, we're talking about the exact moment the divine became a genuine flesh and blood human being.
And this brilliantly illustrates the why behind that strict definition. Check out this quote from the classic theologian John Calvin. He explains that human iniquities had basically created this massive rift, totally estranging humanity from heaven. So if you're going to have a mediator, an intermediary to step in and restore peace across that giant gap, that mediator absolutely must have a mutual connection to both sides. A mere human just couldn't bridge the gap to God, and God, simply remaining in heaven, couldn't act as the human representative. The Savior literally had to be both true God and true man.
To further explain why entering into actual flesh and blood was so strictly required, Dr. Peterson points us straight to Hebrews chapter 2. That's Section 3, 3 pictures of salvation. This translates into 3 specific, really dynamic roles that demanded a physical human body. First, Jesus steps in as the second Adam. See, the first Adam lost humanity's dominion, but Jesus, as the ideal man, regains it. Second, we have Christus Victor, the champion. To defeat the devil and the power of death, he literally had to share in the very flesh and blood of the people he was fighting for. Third, he's the great high priest. To be a relatable, merciful mediator who makes propitiation or atonement for sins, he had to be made like his brothers in every single respect. Every one of these roles completely hinges on him being human.
But, this leads us to a critical, almost trick question within Dr. Peterson's structure. Ask yourself, does the Incarnation, just the event of God becoming man, that baby in the manger, save humanity in and of itself?
The answer is a dramatic, resounding no. The event of the birth doesn't automatically save humanity. It's not some magic spell where simply arriving on Earth fixes the whole problem. What it does do is set the necessary stage for the cross. It is entirely 100% essential, but as a prerequisite, not the final act.
And that takes us to our second required course in this theological syllabus. Section 4, Prerequisite 2, the sinless life. Because becoming human was step 1, but how that human actually lived was step 2. Now, this precondition requires an absolutely flawless record. We are talking about living from birth to death without sinning in thought, word, or deed. It's honestly a level of purity that is almost impossible for us to even wrap our minds around.
To really grasp what that flawless record means, we can use theologian Donald MacLeod's framework, which breaks this purity down into 2 specific categories. First, we have being free from actual sin. This means his outward actions conformed exactly to God's will. He never had to apologize, never felt guilt, never fell short.
But the second category is where it gets incredibly deep, free from inherent sin. This means there wasn't even a tiny internal urge to do wrong. He had zero affinity for sin. Temptation could certainly come at him from the outside, but there was absolutely no possibility of temptation welling up from within his own nature.
Moving to Section 5, why perfect obedience matters. We really need to understand why this absolute perfection is a hard, logical requirement for the rest of those saving events to actually function.
There are 4 absolutely crucial reasons this matters. First, it qualifies the substitute. To pay the debt for the unrighteous, the substitute must be completely righteous. Second, it enables sympathy. Because he faced every external temptation without ever giving in, he understands the full, crushing weight of temptation, which allows him to be a truly merciful high priest. Third, and this is a massive point, it prevents disqualification. If he sinned even once, he becomes just another person needing a savior. Finally, it fulfills true humanity. Dr. Peterson makes such a great point here. Sinfulness isn't actually required to be fully human. In fact, by being sinless, Jesus shows us what true, uncorrupted humanity was always meant to look like. The bottom line? Without this absolute sinlessness, the eventual cross becomes entirely useless.
Theologian John Stott summarizes the extreme stakes of this earthly life perfectly. He notes that if Jesus had disobeyed by deviating even an inch from God's will, the devil would have gained a toehold and totally frustrated the plan of salvation. Think about that. Just a millimeter of deviation, a single fleeting moment of internal selfishness would have brought the entire theological architecture crashing down.
Which brings us to our final synthesis. Section 6, Foundation for the Cross. This is where we bring the prerequisites and those core events together. Philip Edgecombe Hughes offers this quote that just perfectly bridges these concepts. He says, "The cradle was the start of the road that led to the cross, and the purpose of Christ's coming was achieved not in the cradle but on the cross. The manger, the birth, the perfectly lived life over 33 years, these were the indispensable, strictly required means to reach the ultimate end at Calvary. You simply can't have the cross without the cradle, and the cradle means absolutely nothing without the cross."
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought. Think about the traditional Christmas story, the Nativity, the manger scene. If the death and resurrection are the ultimate capstone of salvation, how does understanding their strict, unbending prerequisites change how you view that cradle? It's not just a standalone, heartwarming story, is it? It is the calculated, absolutely necessary opening move in the grand architecture of salvation. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep asking those deep questions.